Hey guys, welcome back to Faith Reframed, where we try to help you reframe your faith rather than lose it. My name is Jesse. I spent 2 decades growing up in the charismatic movement and deconstructed all the way to atheism. By the grace of God, I found my faith again. All right, guys, it dropped. It officially dropped. The news with SHAWN BOLZ, the response from Bethel. This is a live take, a live response. I want to just go through it and read it with you guys. I was going to do a live stream, but I figured I'd rather just do this to get the video up. Wow, it's here. Okay, a couple things. My whole family is sick, so if I look like a madman, that's why. Other than that, let's just jump into it. Let's actually see what this actually is going to be. All right. So Bethel released this. Bethel's statement on SHAWN BOLZ to alumni, February 3rd, 2025. Again, this is my first run through this, so I'm reading this with you. Dear, and this is on Bethel's website, I believe. Yeah, it's on their official website. I just saw it on the Facebook page, Bethel Alumni Facebook page, and I just ran to my computer. All right, dear alumni, we know this feels very late for some of you. Sorry this has taken so long. We are aware that a conversation is happening regarding SHAWN BOLZ and our confrontations with him that took place more than 5 years ago. Okay, so that's the timeline. 5 years ago, that post in 2020. We have delayed in an effort to reflect our recollection accurately, as the issues are important and complex. So they're saying that's a weird cop-out. They're saying they didn't respond quickly because they wanted to make sure they had the right story, that they spun the story. I mean, I'm taking that as they spun the story correctly. Okay, SHAWN BOLZ has ministered to us many times for many years and had a great impact on our house. We deeply valued and trusted him and appreciate his prophetic gift. So they're saying he still had a prophetic gift. They're going to stick with that. Okay. Many of us, because also the theology says that God doesn't take back his gift. So he has a prophetic gift. Regardless of what he does, he still has that prophetic gift. So that's why they say that. Many of us have received important, accurate prophecies and important words of knowledge from him prior to social media being so pervasive that we had in great confidence. Okay. So they're setting the table saying that before the whole social media thing, before Facebook was everywhere and apps and all this stuff, that we received words that were legit. Okay, so that's kind of the table they're setting here, saying like, hey, we received words from this guy that we consider legit. So that's why we trusted him. So that's kind of the table they're setting here. In 2019, some significant concerns came to us from our respected international leaders regarding irregularities in SHAWN's words of knowledge, gift that caused them to wonder if he may have been using social media to generate them. We believe that these concerns and the evidence to support them were gathered and shared in good faith out of concern for the global church. Okay, so this isn't John Doe. They're saying this is a different concern. So earlier in 2019, this wouldn't be the John Doe text messages. They're saying another group of leaders. So someone else outside of this came to them and confronted them with this, saying, hey, this is a concern. This is a red flag. This is what we're seeing. And they thought it was out of concern for the global church. So that's important. I think that's really important. They're saying that this was to protect the entire body. So that was their mindset in that. Okay, interesting. Their presentation of over a dozen words amongst the hundreds he's given was a small sample size, but regardless, was validly concerning and needed to be addressed. For some of our team, the evidence was conclusive, but for others it was not. We did not have a consensus, but we were very concerned and sought clarity from him. So there were some people in Bethel's team, going to give them credit, that were like, this is clear. So some people saw the smoking gun and was like, this is obvious. There's no reason why we shouldn't address this head on. Let's just take it on, while others were saying we should talk to him more. 2 of our leaders met with SHAWN on 2 separate occasions about this. Okay, Chris flew down for his meeting with SHAWN at Bill Johnson's request. Okay, so this is confirming Bill Johnson knew about this. I wonder if they're going to get to the TBN book, because this is Bill Johnson confirming that Bill Johnson knew about this. 2019 is when they said. So at least, 2019. Our leaders also met with SHAWN's board. Okay, so my understanding that was SHAWN BOLZ, his wife, Sean Foyt, and then one other guy, some Dr. Z guy, which we're doing homework on, and shared the evidence and our concerns. Each time, SHAWN absolutely denied using any social media in his words of knowledge and prophecies. SHAWN still maintains he never used social media in any words. And truthfully, unless something changes, only he and the Lord really know it. What? Come again? And truthfully, unless something changes, only he and the Lord really know what took place. So they're... Are they not... I'm sorry. What? So they've had people... They had people bring... I'm normally not at a loss for words. I'm usually pretty composed here. I'm sorry. They had people bring them the words they were concerned about. I mean, we've looked at it. We've Googled it. We've saw it. We've watched the YouTube videos. We've seen the connections. I mean, we spent it really only took me 25 minutes to set these videos to show you the connections and the social media stuff. And they're not going to say that's what it was. So they're saying that we've heard it. We saw the concerns. We looked over it. We examined it. But as a house, and after talking with Sean denied it. So we're just going to say he didn't do it. I'm so confused. We ended up in a stalemate. Okay, so they're in a stalemate. They didn't say anything. So without a satisfactory resolution of our concerns, without definitive proof, repentance, and or team consensus, we made no public statement because we weren't sure. The leaders who previously investigated and gathered the evidence were, of course, free to do with what they thought best going forward. So they're saying other people knew about it. Other people looked at it. Other people drew their conclusions. As a house, we thought it was a stalemate. I cannot believe this statement. And truthfully, unless something changes, this is right now. So unless something changes, only he and the Lord really know what took place. So they're saying, there's no way we can know for sure, guys. There's no way we can know. I am blown away by that. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Wow. That could have been a big win for them. That could have been a big win. If they would have just said, we looked at it, and again, this goes back to what we talked about. Telling people don't act on these prophetic words. Don't do something with these prophetic words. We don't know if they're from God or not. People still act on them. Jubilee. Jubilee, sis, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. This must be so disappointing. But what the heck? They're saying, why couldn't they just say, don't trust the prophetic words? Why couldn't they just say, throw those words out the window? Don't act on them. Don't believe them. They just left the window wide open for everyone that's received a prophetic word from Sean to say, it still could be legit. Go ahead and do something with it. Get yourself, potentially killed by your husband. Do they not see the danger of tampering with the name of the Lord? Of just throwing that out there? Have they learned nothing? Have they learned nothing to the damage that you do to people when you tell them this guy hears from God? These words are legit. He called you out by name. Take the word and run with it. Now, people would say, oh, they're going to argue discern. I'm not going to entertain that argument. This is ridiculous. They need to tell people, don't act on these words. Don't move on them. Don't do it. But they're not doing that. I can't believe that. I cannot believe that. Around the same time, one of Sean's employees, okay, so now they have corroborating evidence. They have two people now, made allegations concerning inappropriate behavior in an unacceptable work environment. Though Sean was not and is not under our authority, one of our leaders found another impacted former team member, went to Sean and confronted him on those issues over several difficult conversations and admonished him that this behavior was completely unacceptable and that he should take responsibility. Okay, so they had a member at Bethel. This is probably our John Doe that confronted him. So now we're talking about, sexual stuff that's happening. Surprise, surprise. It always leads to that. And that they confronted him. And so they had a corroborating evidence with a personal assistant or an employee. Another employee said the same thing. So then they have two people and they still won't say. They say, unless something changes. So having two people that work for Sean bring you stuff isn't enough. What's it going to take, Bethel? Come on, guys. Gosh. He indicated to us that the behaviors that had taken place had stopped. Okay, so now... Oh my gosh. This is. Oh. He indicated to us the behaviors that he had taken place had stopped, which means it happened. You can't stop something that never happened. So it happened. What's it going to take? Like, at what point is Bethel going to go, this guy wasn't a good prophet? Are they even going to say that? They padded it with we got real prophecies. They're saying nothing unless something changes. We think these were all legit. Like, that's what this said up here. That's what this was. Like, do not be mistaken. That's what this was right here. Like, please do not misunderstand this. And truthfully, unless something changes, only he and the Lord really know what took place. They're saying these words are still legit. Like, their silence is deafening on this. They need to just say the words weren't legit. They were false words. They have to say it. But if they say it, their discernment's out the window, and the whole prophetic movement, like we know, Chris said, this would be more damaging to the prophetic movement worldwide. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. He indicated to us that the behaviors had taken place had stopped. Though we are not experts, these behaviors seem to fit descriptions of sexual harassment in a hostile work environment commonly taught in HR training and had potential legal ramifications. We recommended they take action in seeking a remedy through the justice system. They're passing the buck. I see Romans 13 right there. They're passing the buck, such as labor board, arbiters, or courts, as there were no real movements from SHAWN to address in the past situation. There was no real movement from SHAWN to address the past situations, and we had done what we could given the limited level of knowledge we had at the time. We spoke to his board regarding some of this concern. Okay, so they're passing the buck. They're saying it's not our job. It's not our job. They're just. This is what we're getting set up with. Watch. I guarantee it. Romans 13 teaches us that God is, civil leaders in place as ministers of God for the kind of issues his former team member had brought to us. What about Timothy? What about Titus? What about Acts 20? Are you saying just because officially he wasn't a part of your church, you don't have to address this? You labeled him as a prophet. You sold his merchandise. You sold his courses. You sold him his name at prophetic conferences. You sold him at the Open Heaven Conference. You sold him at Azusa Now. Is there no need to address that? You're just going to say, well, that's the government's job? Are you kidding me, Bethel? Come on, guys. Like, do better. This is... I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. They're passing the buck. Furthermore, their experience was absolutely important and personal, and as such was their story to tell, not ours. Maybe they would feel more comfortable coming out in front of this if they knew they had you guys behind them. It'd be a lot easier to come out and not have to be a John Doe if you felt like the whole house wasn't against you. Because you said, unless something changes, we don't know. That's only him and the Lord know what took place. Unless something changes. So they're saying they have all this evidence. They had just keep this in mind. They're writing this after all this is known. They have known sexual harassment allegations from two employees who also corroborated the words of knowledge. They have global leaders that are well respected that are bringing them concerns about data mine for words of knowledge. But unless something changes, only the Lord really knows what took place. Why can't they just say it? Say the thing. Say he's a false prophet. Just say it. Like this is the standard. This is the modern like what's the word I'm looking for? The State of the Union for the prophetic industry. We have a guy with sexual abuse allegations that is has two people corroborating, plus a board of leaders, plus mountains of evidence showing that he data mined, and they're not going to say it. They won't label him a false prophet. If you're a charismatic and you still believe in the modern prophetic movement, don't trust it from any of these people because they won't label this guy a false prophet. This general context to what Chris was speaking in the text messages that we were posting on social media. Okay, so this is where these get from. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like, I am so mad. I'm reading. This is my first time reading this. I am like so mad. I'm so mad right now. Sean was a trusted guest minister who spoke often on our platform. If Sean worked for us, again passing the buck, or was truly officially under our covering, New Apostolic Reformation understanding of covering, that he wasn't officially under one of their apostles and prophets, so he wasn't under their covering, the situation would have been handled much differently. We would have not just appealed to Sean, we would have required comprehensive and a righteous response. Whether related or not, shortly after we addressed our concerns, it appeared that Sean took steps to adjust how he operated in words of knowledge. He just recently spoke to some of these changes he has made, which can be found as here. Okay, so now... So they would have demanded a more righteous response if he was under their covering. Again, this is passing the buck. I cannot believe this is what they're doing. They are not owning it. They're not owning it. Just own it, guys. Own that you messed up. Own that you knew he was abusing people. Own that you knew he was abusing the name of God. Own it. And just tell people we're sorry and don't trust his words. But because they're sticking in this like weird gray middle area of like, we still want to make sure he has a prophetic gifting. God gave him, like we've had really good words from him. He's still a really good prophet. We just we don't know really what happened here. Like, because they're sitting on this like milquetoast fence sitting policy of not just saying he's a false prophet, because if they did that, then they would have to hold themselves to these standards of false prophecy. They would have to look back on their own prophetic words and say, oh, false prophet. But they won't do that. I can't believe it. And also, mind you, I have heard so many students saying, there's no way Bethel knew about this. There's no way they would know about this and not say anything. I've had so many students tell me that they are appalled by the idea of this, people that have graduated. And now it's coming out that they knew, and they didn't say anything. In the absence of clarity about both what really happened with some of the words of knowledge and having addressed the issues with his former team members and found his response lacking, we made decisions to step back from our ministry connection. Okay, so now they're saying this is when they decided to step back. We did not have him ministering to our people or movement, but you did. Okay, but you did. He gave prophetic words and you let them sit. You let people dwell on those prophetic words. You let people go back to them. You well as know as I do, Bill and Chris, you guys know that you tell people to write down these prophetic words, to write them in journals, to hold on to them, to pray on them, to dwell on them. He was still ministering to your people through those prophetic words that you will not tell people were false words. He was still doing it. Or have his materials in our stores, though we missed some things. We communicated our concern, confusion, and his denials to the leaders who initially raised concerns about the words of knowledge with us, as well as to leaders closely connected to Sean, and made the evidence available to them to make their own decisions. We firmly admonished and warned him and responded by making some changes in both the areas. We made it clear that global leaders were concerned and watching closely. These were all the boundaries that produced some of the necessary changes. So they did tell people. They told us, so other leaders knew about this. That's just read between the lines, guys. That's what that was. We made it clear to global leaders were concerned and watched closely. So other people knew. So Cheon did know. Like, I'm just going to say it. Probably Cheon, probably the Arnotts, probably the Bakers, probably the Banoffs, probably all the people that ran with them. Has to be. There's no way that just stayed quiet. 1 Timothy 5:20 says, publicly rebuke elders who continue in sin. We weren't entirely clear what was happening in the words of knowledge and unaware of the scope of his issues with his former team members, but believed he changed his behavior and the work environment going forward after our confrontation, so we did not make a public statement. In the past, we have only brought public admonishment to those outside of our organization in cases where no acknowledgement and change is taking place after correction. Okay. They're talking about Jason Westerfield. No doubt they are, because that's the only false prophet I could think of they've ever really addressed publicly is Jason Westerfield, which don't know. I was at Bethel when Jason Westerfield was up and coming. He was the janitor that basically had all these testimonies of people's heads growing back, all this stuff. And they basically couldn't. There's more to that. It's ridiculous. But anyways, they're saying because he wasn't continuing in sin, it should publicly rebuke. The difference is that everyone knew what was going on with Jason Westerfield. That was the difference. Westerfield, everyone knew what was going on. It was the worst kept secret. He was very public about what was going on. So Bethel had to say something. They could not stay quiet. Bill had to publicly rebuke Jason Westerfield. He had to, because he was saying some off the wall stuff and was losing it. Some would say crazy. So they had to say something. They didn't feel like they had to say something about this because not everyone knew about it. Make no mistake. They're hiding behind scripture on this one. If everyone knew what was going on, if it was publicly known like this, they would have said something. They had to say something. So I don't buy it. I think it's a poor exegete, a poor use of it. They knew what was going on and they didn't tell their flock. Timothy also says the job of the elder is to protect the flock from false doctrine. Let's just sit on that. We empathize with those who are confused and disappointed over the situation. We feel the same. This is a tender, confusing, and complex situation. As it stands, our trust in Shawn is still unrepaired. So you don't trust him, but you're going to let, again, I can't believe this. I don't think they realize what they're saying. They just said they don't trust Shawn. They don't trust him. But they're going to trust other people with his words that he has given. They're going to say, we don't trust him, but you guys can keep trusting him. Like, do they not see the doublespeak there? Having privately admonished him, this letter is only intended to clarify the journey we're on and the steps we have taken, given that is now a wider conversation. We receive and value the feedback that our actions may have been too subtle and difficult to decipher, and that it would have been more helpful to openly acknowledge that we were creating distance with Shawn due to our concerns. You still aren't, though. You still aren't saying that his words were bad. You're only creating distance now on. You're not looking back. Like, I don't think they realize this. Like, yes, moving forward, we're not working with Shawn, but do they not realize that there's Jubilee? If you're watching this, I'm sorry this is the response to this, but you have people like Jubilee who acted on these words and nearly died because of them. And you Lord knows how many people are still acting on words that he has given that could be putting themselves in more precarious positions. And they're not saying, hey guys, as your leaders, just don't act on these words. Just flush them down the toilet, as Chris would say. Why won't they say that? Why can't they say that? Why can't they just say, don't follow his words, he's a false prophet? That's all it would take. I would have so much respect for Bethel. I would have so much respect if they would just say it. Just say it. Say the thing. If you were charismatic and you still are part of the prophetic movement, let this be a warning for you. They will not, if they can't label Shawn as a false prophet, to what end does it have to be? There are no false prophets at this point. Like, think about that. If they're not willing to label Shawn, known apparently sexual abuser, sexual harasser, had multiple leaders. I mean, how disrespectful does it have to feel to the leaders who brought stuff, the assistants who brought stuff? All these people lay things before you, showing he's data mining, and you go, well, only he and the Lord know what's going on, and you won't label him a false prophet. Because if they did that, then they have to be held to those prophetic standards. Right now, there are 0 prophetic standards for accountability, and they want to keep it that way based on this response. They like not having any account. Like, how can that not be the conclusion here? Like, they want to have no accountability, because if they have to say he's a false prophet, if they have to say all these words from him we can't count, if they have to do that, if any kind of severing or accountability has to take place, they then have to do it upon themselves, right? They have to say, oh, look, we did this with Shawn. Now let's look at the house. Let's look inward and do this. And they won't do it. They won't say it, because if they did, they're put in a pickle where now prophetically, their prophetic movement has to be scrutinized and judged by these same standards. They didn't do it with Bob Jones. They said Bob Jones is still a prophet. They brought him to our school to prophesy over us as students the year before he died. Like, after everything he did. So clearly, after Bob Jones was telling women to undress so he could prophesy to them, they didn't hold that as a standard. They brought him to us as students and prophesied over us as students. So why would they do it with Shawn? Because then Bob Jones is discredited. Then Mike Bickle is discredited. Then everyone's... this rate, the whole prophetic movement's discredited. Like, oh my gosh. Why won't they say it? Why can't they say it? Why won't they do it? I'm grieved over this. I'm grieved. I'm like, this was their time to, this was their moment. This was their time to shine. This was their time to not to prove us wrong, to prove the critics wrong. And they failed. They won't do it. It is so disappointing. So disappointing. We acknowledge we have more to learn in handling situations outside our staff environment with greater clarity, and we have been working for the last several months on standardized procedures for hearing and responding to concerns in order to create an even healthier church culture. Yes, they did add a report line in for abuse. They added that, a third-party report line in the Bethel alumni page. They did add that, so I'll give them credit for that. Words of knowledge are a significant, important element of conveying the heart of God. So is Scripture. Demanding high levels of integrity, accountability, and responsibility in our work environments and team relationships must be full of holiness, respect, appropriate behavior, and safety, such as they reflect the joy and glory of God. We pray for the Holy Spirit to bring wisdom, humility, comfort, and instructions to each of us, Bethel leadership. This is a huge disappointment. This is a massive disappointment. I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm not getting emotional over this, but I'm like, there are so many people whose lives have been torn apart by this, whose lives have been ripped apart by false prophetic words given by a man claiming to hear the voice of God, who have uprooted their lives, who have started businesses, who have married people, who have moved, who have made career decisions off of this man's prophetic words. And the fact that they will not say those are false words, like that's all it would take. Like, I don't understand. Why can't they do that? What would be the harm in doing that? And they're not doing it. And they're leaving all these people. My gosh, all these people who have acted on these things, who have changed their lives, aren't even getting the solidarity of someone saying, just let it go. Just let it go. Don't worry about that prophetic word. It wasn't true. Like, do they not realize how much comfort that would bring someone who's been like holding on to this word from the man of God, thinking they have to make this thing happen, that they have to put all their effort into this because where God guides, God provides, whatever idiom you want to put in here, how much relief it would bring to someone to say, just let it go. And because Bethel won't do it, I will tell you, if you received a word from SHAWN BOLZ, a word of knowledge, a prophetic word, a guiding word, don't act on it. Stop. It wasn't from God. I'm going to tell you that right now. That word was not from God. This man is a false prophet. And because Bethel won't say it, now I have to. Now the guys who are minor prophets have to. Now Mike Winger has to. Now Chris Roseborough has to. Now because Bethel, you won't do your job. Now we have to. And you're the ones who are supposed to be the leaders of a prophetic movement. Chris, you literally wrote the book on modern day prophecy. Why can't you just label him a false prophet? Why? I can't think of what is beneficial to you to not do this. I have so much more I want to say on this. So much more. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Well, I'm just going to stop it here because it's late. I'm done. I'm sad. I'm grieved. Angry. We'll cover this more, but be blessed.